everybody. I'm Vic from South Philly, and today I am chatting with Bill Staxx. Staxx, you are the man, and I can't wait to continue to watch, follow you, and support you in every which way possible. Thank you, Bill.
And all the time, a major organized crime bust. 23 people under arrest now accused of stealing guns and cash.
Today, police revealed 4 organized crime groups are wreaking havoc.
From aggravated robbery to kidnapping, burglary, and more. Let's take a look at this. New pictures from court documents in this case. These reveal the people who have been charged, and investigators say the money, tens of thousands of dollars, is all stolen.
FBI, open up! Welcome to this episode of Chatting with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got Vinny from South Philly.
Bill, it's a pleasure to be with you. How are you today?
Thank you for coming on my show. I appreciate it. I'm doing great.
Fantastic. Yeah, man. I love it. Was looking forward to this, and here I am.
Yeah, you have some great content. I've been watching you for a while. We have a lot of people in common. I was like, damn, this is really good, especially is that your no?
Which one's that?
The grandma?
No, mine's are unfortunately dearly departed.
I'm sorry to hear that.
They never,
mine are too. Mine are too.
They never. Well, my one grandfather did come over here to visit, but they basically all lived in Italy and they never really came here.
So where did it start for you? Where you want to introduce yourself to the people?
Yes.
Tell them where you were born and raised.
Absolutely. So, as my name would suggest, South Philly. I was born near the Italian Market area, like a block away from the Italian Market. So it's we're basically born in the market. So and that would be in the Bella Vista, what's called the Bella Vista part of town in Philadelphia. To basically all of the immigrants that came over from Italy, whether it was Sicily or Calabria or Naples or wherever, Abruzzi, they would come over and they settled in that Italian market area in South Philly, which then began to, as it developed and people advanced and began to get some more money and own their own homes, they spread more southward. South Philly at the time was mostly I think it was mostly like Irish in those neighborhoods. And then the Italians came over. You had a lot of German. So Philly's an amalgamation of a lot of different cultures. The name Germantown suggests it was a lot of Germans in that area back in like the Revolutionary days. There's a ton of history in Philly, regardless. But my parents came over from Italy in the '60s, so I'm first generation. My grandfather actually was here, worked in the railroads, turn of the century, early 1900s. My father's father, my dad was the youngest. And so, and he fought in the World War, so that's how we got citizenship. So it was pretty interesting background. But I was raised with the traditional values of how they were raised in that little town in Calabria, right near Reggio, Calabria. So fast forward, born and raised, parish community. Philly's a city of neighborhoods, and grew up just meeting a lot of different people, and great little childhood. That I know everybody's neighborhood's changed. I talked to a lot of my friends in Brooklyn, Queens, different parts of the country, and people reminisce and wish it was like the good old days. But things change, but you still see those little reminders of the past.
Did your parents not want you to be Americanized?
No, they wasn't. No, they were Americanized themselves. I mean, they worked. They learned the language. They worked. They blue collar jobs. And it was never like anything like that. It was never.
I've heard some stories of like when kids would try to do things that Americans did, the parents would be upset about it. They'd be like, "No, you're not getting into that."
No, I think it was more. Their concern was more just staying out of trouble. That was the main thing because obviously South Philly, there's a lot of trouble you can get into, just like any major city.
So what kind of things were happening? What was your childhood like in South Philly?
Well, I mean, you still had a lot of different like little gangs going on. You had like little there was a lot of. It wasn't as bad as now. Like the gun thing wasn't around. It was more of like there was a lot of fights, a lot of like inner neighborhood fights, things like that. Little petty crime, things like that. But they just like any Italian parents, they don't want you, or any ethnic parents for that matter, they don't want you hanging out with the wrong element.
Don't hang out with those boys, right? Yeah, I got the same shit growing up.
And you don't listen, so you still hang out with them anyway.
Did you have any trouble growing up?
No, not really. I mean, you get into this small little mischief or whatever. I always kind of like, Yeah, I ran with there was, maybe a bad crowd, but then I also ran with the good crowd. I was kind of like one foot in each camp. Because at heart, I realized that I was raised to kind of fly straight. So even though I kind of meandered around that, sometimes I still, up until this day, really know where the compass is.
Yeah.
Well, Philly's a good town. Couple fun things that happened being from Philly is, like, for instance, like when I was in Rocky Balboa, I was in that neighborhood when they were shooting. I forget what year that was. It might have been 2007. I forget now. But they were around the neighborhood. They were in the Italian market, and I got actually, they pulled me out of a crowd, man. So I got to be in the movie. And
Oh, the newer Rocky, right? The
well, this was
Balboa.
2007. This is the one with where he was. Remember when Adrian died, and he had the restaurant, and he was.
Yeah.
So I got to meet him and his brother Frank Sloan. Was really cool. They were really really nice. But unfortunately, I got cut out of the movie.
Oh,
So
they cut it. You're swell.
they have. I mean, they cut a lot of scenes out. That's how it is. They overshoot. Whenever any movie, they shoot a lot of footage, and whatever they keep, they keep. Whatever they don't, they don't. But it was cool that I got to hang out with them. It was very nice. I got to meet Burt Young, who was Paulie, tremendous guy, really good hearted. And so now, being from that neighborhood, that was a neighborhood where you know we had a restaurant called Palumbo's. It was a nightclub before Atlantic City came into fruition. Philly was kind of an epicenter of different nightclubs, and they had a lot of, like, the Rat Pack and Sinatra, and a lot of these guys would run through Philly and perform back in the old days. So Philly had a lot of good things going. It still does. Still a good place for the arts. Music, and
Yeah, it's really historic place too. Like
yeah.
the
I think
bell and
kind of,
all that.
New York's great. I like to go to. In fact, I'm due up for another trip to New York. But New York's great. It's got it reminds me of, like, Philly on steroids. I mean, there's just beautiful, great, places and history and the whole thing. And, like, we go back to our culture, man, and it's a beautiful thing. I love every culture. I think everybody should really embrace their culture, whatever culture you are, and really, do everything you can to preserve those kind of things.
Yeah. So when you were growing up, did you hear about the events that were taking place in Philly, like the bombing of the Chicken Man Testa and things like that? Do you remember when them things happened?
That was little. I was born in '78, so that was probably, I think that was like the early '80s, probably '82. I forget exactly when. So I was little, but yeah, of course, growing up, you hear about those stories, and then you hear about, wow, this person was involved, that person was involved, a lot of crazy things as you hear that kind of stuff. Being in the Italian market area, that's ground zero for that kind of stuff too. I mean, that's where they all were.
Yeah.
My dad, God rest his soul, he knew Angelo, Angelo Bruni. They were friends. They knew those guys. I mean, I kind of remember some of those guys. I remember going to some of those cafes and being around that. That everybody was. But to be honest, those old timers, man, they were courteous. They were tipping their hat off when ladies would walk by. I mean, literally.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a different type of thing, and of course, like everybody says, you didn't have the crime. It just didn't exist, man.
They protected the neighborhood, right? In the beginning.
Well, it was a deterrent for sure, because
Yeah.
you definitely didn't. The word got out, and unless you were mentally ill, you really didn't do anything stupid in the neighborhood.
Do you remember any big moments that happened when you were coming
I mean,
up?
I was trick or treating when they had, when Scarfell's son got shot at Dante and Luigi's, which is, I throw stone. That's where I lived. I live right there. So I mean, I remember trick or treating my Jason mask when that happened.
Oh man.
And really didn't know what was going on. Just seen a bunch of cops, all kinds of confusion. Who knew what was going on back then? But that's, yeah. I mean, look, that was the neighborhood. Unfortunately, a lot of murders took place around that neighborhood.
What, you're like walking home from school and you see tape set up because they found a body in the trunk or something?
Nah, I wish I could say it was that dramatic. No, although that did happen not too far away. That happened, in South Philly. But, that a couple times that did happen. But no, I didn't witness any of that stuff. I have family members that did. There's some gruesome stuff, man. But I know a lot of the stories. You kind of like wonder if they're true or whatever. Most of them are.
Yeah.
We had nightclubs that were supposedly mob owned that you would go in there, and I was there. I mean, there was some crazy stuff, like as far as I remember being in one. I don't want to mention the name. It's not there anymore. They tore it down, but like I remember being in there and just hearing these crazy loud bangs out of nowhere, like unexplained. Just drinks moving by themselves on the bar, like crazy stuff. And supposedly, the murders were taking place there. Who knows? But it was definitely haunted.
So what did you want to do when you grew up? What was your ambitions and your goals?
I'll be honest with you, Bill. I really didn't have a really firm grasp on that, because growing up, I don't know about you, but a lot of us were told that, like, you need a good stable job, get a good city job, the whole deal. And the whole emphasis was on stability and just getting a regular job. I just found myself early. I started Dante Luigi's, we just talked about, but Palumbo's, which was another place that was like, it was originally a boarding home for Italians that became a mecca for entertainment. It was a big nightclub in there. It was Frank Palumbo was a big operator in this in the country, let alone the city. And so I worked there before it burnt down. Unfortunately, that burnt down in '93, I believe.
You worked at Dante and Luigi's too? You worked there?
No, Dante Luigi's still there. It's still there.
No, did you work there when you grew up?
Yeah.
What did you do there?
Well, at that time I was a busboy, and then I think I became a waiter. But so I was always in the front of the house. So I worked there. I worked at then I moved out of I worked at Ralph's, another popular Italian restaurant. Then I moved on to the Four Seasons, the Ritz Carlton, the Prime Rib. So I went, and it's a good and bad thing. The good thing is, being in a restaurant business, you learn how to really talk to people that you never probably would ever meet in your life. I was at that time. I remember I was waiting on the heads of Comcast. Now it's Xfinity. The Roberts, Ralph Roberts, and his wife Suzanne. And I used to joke around with them like I would joke around with my friends on the street. I was very comfortable around like people with that. I used to break their chops because they used to share everything. I used to share a salad, share a steak, and I'm like, I used to mess with them like, you guys are cheap.
Usually rich people are cheap. They're the cheapest one.
But what I'm getting at is, being in the food and beverage industry, it gave me entree to a lot of different type of personalities, and I got to interact with a lot of people. And I think it helped build my confidence and social ability to be able to feel comfortable around people. It's the bad part of it though is, it's a nightlife kind of an environment. So you're hanging out all night, and then you're drinking, and then you're going after hours, and then so if you don't really discipline yourself, it could get out of control too.
Yeah, you sleep your whole day away, and then you got to wake up and do it again.
Exactly.
Right?
But, it's a good experience too. I think it's a good social experience to learn how to talk with people and interact. I then at some point, was it 2008, I moved to LA. A buddy of mine lived out there that was from Philly, one of my best friends. I was like, no, man, I jumped on. So I lived in LA, in a suburb of LA, Thousand Oaks. I worked in Beverly Hills. First time I got there, I got hired at 2 different restaurants the first day because I was spitting out the Italian, and they liked that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, something different for them, right? Something fresh, different.
I think they liked the fact that I was an East Coaster too. I could speak Italian. I guess I impressed them. And that was Cafe Roma, which was, they closed unfortunately recently, but that was like where Stallone and Schwarzenegger, everybody hung out at Cafe Roma. It was a very popular place. And then eventually, and then the other place was Il Fornaio. I took Il Fornaio, but I really probably should have worked at Cafe Roma because that's where the bigger personalities would go. But that was great because I met a lot of different stars. In fact, I'm going to probably, I am going to soon going to be putting like maybe 10, 15-minute clips on my YouTube channel about my experience there, some of the stars I met, and some of the misadventures.
Yeah. So did you have ambitions of being an actor or doing things like that back then?
I was interested in it, but I really got into screenwriting. So I really enjoyed when I discovered it. A friend of mine was a writer, and I started to kind of I always wrote as a child. I remember being maybe 10 years old, and I always liked Saturday Night Live, like the old Saturday Night Live with Piscopo and those guys. So I would kind of write my own little sketches and act out. Yeah. But I always liked to write. So I discovered when I was in LA, sort of like how the business is and how it is to be a writer, which is not easy. And it's not the best thing, but in terms of, financially, or you don't get the star power, but it's still very rewarding. And so I started to get into that, and I started hanging out with some people that were into that, and it's stayed in my life. Fast forward, get married, kids, the whole thing. But now here I am. I just finished. I finished a few screenplays, but my latest one. It's called The Pasta and Cheech Crew. It's about it's a mob comedy about a bunch of bumbling mobsters that are trying to pull off the biggest heist of their lives and stay relevant.
I can't wait to see it, man. Your content is funny. There's a lot of you have a lot of different guests, and it's pretty entertaining.
Yeah, thanks, Bun. It's I know that on social media they say you should really stick to one genre, but I love comedy and I love to interview people. So I'm just doing my thing, man. It's working. I haven't had any complaints yet. My content, my page is steadily growing. I started a year ago, and this is a good story too for people that are kind of beginners. Started literally the last day of December of 2022, and I never really was into. I mean, I was on Facebook, whatever, but somebody said, "Oh, you can start doing videos on Instagram." I'm like, "I mean, let me check this out." So I started playing around with Instagram. And I had nobody, it was early 2023, had nobody. And I just started like incrementally trying to build. I started doing these goofy skits, more of a way to like decompress from all the stress of working and, raising a family, So I did it, and playing around, and it kind of just kept on going. And then I started to realize like how, like what people were doing and kind of how to maneuver and how to put out a little bit better quality. I'm not there 100% yet, but it started to grow, and then I realized, I want to start to interview people because I like that interaction. I like to hear people's story. It's motivating, and you get access to people you normally wouldn't speak to, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've met people that are I'm just like, wow, when I really think about who these people are, like people who've been on Superman and different actors, it's just incredible that I get a chance to speak with these people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we just interviewed Lou Lombardi, man. What a great guy. I mean, it was like it's like growing up with like someone you grew up with. He's just amazing. It was a great interview. We did that live on Instagram, and then we put it out.
Yeah.
I'm still learning all the little, ins and outs of how to grow with YouTube, and that's difficult. But I think it comes down to one thing. It's a long-term play. There's no shortcuts. There's no like cheat codes. You just got to keep putting in the grind and the work, and eventually it'll fall into place.
Consistency is a huge thing, because a lot of people they say they're going to do all kinds of things and they don't follow through.
Yeah, it's easy to kind of just give up, and just when you kind of feel like you'll want to, like, is this really worth my time? Then something happens that reminds you it is. But yeah, you got to persevere, because as you know, Bill, it's tough, man. You got a lot of, you got to make the content, then you got to edit it, and you got to hope that people are
full-time
watching.
job. It's a full-time job. It really is.
But it is rewarding. Let's face it. I think there's always room to improve, which is true. But you know what? Here's the thing. There's never been a better time to do it yourself. There's never been a time where, look, we could just turn on our phones, do what we're doing right here, and then blast it out, and potentially could reach, thousands, maybe even millions of people if they wanted to.
Yeah.
So the control is in our hands now.
Someone did a podcast recently, and they said that your father was being extorted in prison. Do you feel like your father would have ever cooperated to get other people in trouble?
Hi, everyone. I'm Rita Giganti, psychic medium, author. I'm the daughter of Vincent Giganti and Olympia Giganti. I'm enjoying my time here with Mr. Staxx. I thank him for having me on, and hopefully you guys have a great day.